Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I have the pleasure to be joined for this episode by Natalie Cutler-Welsh, all the way from here in Auckland, even though we are able to actually potentially be in person, but this is a good way to do meetings nowadays in this modern world. So thank you, Natalie, so much for taking the time to be here. I'm super excited about this conversation with you. And for everybody that perhaps doesn't know you, or not all of you, who is Nat?
Thank you so much, Brian. I'm actually a listener of your podcast, and I'm an ex-podcaster, so I know how much work and heart and sweat goes into it. So good. First of all, good on you for doing it. It's amazing. Who am I? I'm a super connector. I'm an impact and visibility coach. I'm an ex-multi-sport athlete, mother of 3, author of 2 books, and a few more maybe to come in the years to come. I'm a Canadian Kiwi, so you can tell by my accent that is not going anywhere that I've been living in New Zealand for 25 years, but I come from Canada. Kiwi family, grew up in Canada. And I am obsessed with helping people to shine bright, right? I love to shine the light on people. I do help people get opportunities to speak and to be seen and heard on a bigger level. That is part of my business, but it's something I've always done, is just encourage people to say what they want. And that's not always easy, especially in this day and age.
Yes, beautiful. And first, thank you for being a listener, and thank you for cheering there every time that there's something relevant that we do that you're sharing. I have been part for this last year or so on one of your groups, the Amplify group, and it's been wonderful. And I can definitely say you're wonderful at making connections and to enable people to help to amplify what they are doing, which is not always easy. And it's not always something that we're really looking forward to doing. I know it's much more comfortable to stay where I am than to take steps to actually get much more visibility. And this is part of working with you that has been really helpful. And I'm curious, Nat, if you can share a little bit from, growing up. Was this something that as well was part of your life? Were you always like a person, like a people's person, or how did this come to be?
I am that geeky person that if I saw someone that I went to school with in grade 2, I would, number one, recognize them, probably remember their name, and definitely have the courage or embarrassment to call out to them in public and start a conversation. So yeah, I've always been that person. When my sister was going into grade 7, that's in Canada. Okay. Let's just say year 7. And I was in year 9, and I was already at the school that she was joining me at. And I remember vividly going, oh, she would be a great friend for Steph. And oh, she would be a great friend. And I was already planning to introduce my sister to all these girls that I thought she would vibe with. And it's just who I am. And yeah, rightly or wrongly, that is what I've always done.
Wow, that's amazing. And tell me a little bit, or takes us through a little of your journey with, I know you do so many different things, and you have done so many different things. You have already talked about a few of them. Tell me a little bit, what has been that timeline, and how have things evolved and changed?
Yeah, it's interesting. The common thread is helping people do and be more than they ever thought possible. That's not how I market myself, really, but that is the common thread between everything. So back in high school, I was in the Gaia Club, I was in Amnesty International, I was op shopping way before it was the cool thing to do. I know everyone op shops now. You're thrifting, depending on where you're listening from. Standing up for human rights and things like that. Like that is, I guess I've always been a little bit of an eco warrior. I decided overnight to go cold turkey vegetarian, meaning I was not a vegetarian at all. And I just decided that it wasn't fair to the animals. And the next day I was a vegetarian, and 16 years later, I stopped, right? So it was like when I was 16 in America and Canada, we do a lot of sweet 16 birthday parties. For my 16th birthday party, I wanted a sponsor child from World Vision. Okay. So that's who I was. Obviously we all evolve, right? We go through life, we change, but you can see the core traits. If you know me well, you'll go, oh yeah, that sounds about right. The next path in university, international development, third world studies, went to Guyana, tried to help build schools and wells and things like that, which was an interesting experience, ended up getting malaria. But, then I moved on to outdoor education. So what I've always wanted to do is understand people, understand humanity and how and why they act the way they do. So I did study that Masters of International Development, and which is interesting, especially now looking at, colonization and the, the economy and the global economy and politics, which we'll get to in a moment. Because I actually did stand for the Green Party in politics back in the day in 2005. So I studied outdoor recreation here in New Zealand. This is what brought me home. I was 23 and I was like, I just want to discover my heritage. I just want to see where I'm from, because all I've ever done is come to New Zealand once for 2 weeks every 5 years for my life. So I'd meet my cousins, wouldn't see them for 5 years, come back to New Zealand. So we have all these memories, but didn't really know where I was from. So I came at the age of 23, and really I've only been back twice, and I'm 48. So it's crazy. So I really wanted to study the outdoors, not because I love rock climbing or kayaking, but because I love people. I wanted to use the outdoors as a medium for personal development, personal discovery. So we would go, tramping in the bush, and then we'd sit down and we'd debrief. We'd be like, well, how was that for you? And what did you learn about yourself? And that's all the geeky stuff that I'm into. So nowadays I joke that I'm like allergic to camping because I'm not really into outdoorsy stuff quite the same. Although I did have a stint of being a multi-sport athlete a little bit. I did the Southern Traverse, which if you're in New Zealand, you know what that is. And it's a take no prisoners. Okay. It's a 5-day nonstop. The clock doesn't stop adventure race with, kayaking and biking, mountain biking and tramping. And I'm pretty competitive, and I'm very small, and everyone always tells me how tiny I am when they meet me. But I'm really strong and very determined. So that was super, super fun. And I had some beautiful friends. I used to work at Outward Bound. We were the Outward Bound team. We were representing 2 women, 2 men, which is very rare to have a 2-woman team. It's always 3 guys and a girl. Okay. I like to do things differently. I'm very into woman power. And that is part of my journey, is helping people to do and be more than they ever thought possible. It wasn't always business, and after the outdoors came parenting, and I had children, and I was like, this is really hard. And I wrote a book, and I did 200 podcasts, right? Called If Only They Told Me. And that's the name of my book. So I wanted to help people to really, interestingly, keep the marriage alive when they have kids was really my topic area that I partnered with my co-author in, et cetera, ended up in Auckland due to the Christchurch earthquakes, having to start again with my house in the red zone, my husband losing his job. And we had a brand new baby the day after. When we moved with a 6-week-old baby, we moved here and started in Auckland. And I started doing for free a business coffee group for all these local moms that I met that were so nice, and they all ran their own business. And I didn't have a business, but I was writing a book, and I brought people together and I connected them. And my husband said, Nat, can you charge these ladies? Because we are going backwards financially. And that's how my business started, because I was doing something that I love doing, that I'm really good at, that I was doing for free. And he said, can you add a price tag? And I was like, yep. And really, that's the start of my business journey. I forgot the part where I stood for Parliament, but whatever. I am also a speaker. So my speaking really started in the political area. And now I speak about courage. My topic is Up Your Brave, confidence, resilience. And we need a lot of confidence and resilience these days. And here we are.
Beautiful. It's so incredible, like hearing sometimes some of these journeys that have had so many different paths, and like I mean, it makes sense when you are going through it, but listening from outside, it's like, oh wow, this, that, and you left out like that, running for parliament and everything like that, and it's like, and then I'm sure there's much more, but I want to touch on, because I think that this is really, really relevant for now, that is this topic that you just mentioned, that up your brave. Because I think that there is so much importance on this topic in terms of personal development, but also from a business perspective. That is how, like for me, with working with you, where that has been part of my own journey. But can you explain a little bit more what do you mean by it? How do you work with that? And anything else that you would like to expand on it?
Yeah, well, up your brave obviously means different things to different people. And so sometimes I'll say to people, or in my Instagram, I'll say, what does upping your brave look like to you? Because for some people that would be, ooh, I would love to do a TED talk, right? I get people all the time wanting to do that. Oh, I would love to write a book. I would love to run a marathon. Upping my brave would be, maybe for some people, leaving my marriage. It might be upping my brave would be applying for that promotion at work that I keep thinking I'm not good enough for, but I actually know I am. So it can be so many different things to so many different people. And I love, in my work, I really help people identify what zone they're currently in at the moment. And when I do this on stage, you have to imagine, like, I stand up and I stand on this side of the stage and I say, some people, they're stuck in what we call the disconnected zone. And I'm standing on the side of the stage and I'm saying, they're going through the motions of life. They're not really invested in what they're doing. They're just going to work, coming home or whatever, you're making the dinner, but they're not fired up. They're just literally robotically going through the motions. And then moving across, some people are in the should zone of life or business, where they're thinking, there's things I should do. There's things I said I would do. So they're not driven by empowered choices. They're driven by guilt and shame. If you actually are honest with what you're looking at, they're driven by doing what other people want or expect them to do. That's the should zone. And I have a lot of people going, ooh, when I say that. And the next zone we call the frustration zone. You're in the frustration zone when you're suddenly getting anger erupting, right? Instead of just feeling bad about things like guilty, you're actually going, you know what? That's not fair. You know what? Enough is enough. And the great news about the frustration zone is you're finally ready to do something about it. So even though it's a volatile zone and people think anger is bad and jealousy is bad, well, they're actually good things. And I can talk about that later. So in the frustration zone, we are finally at that enough is enough moment, and we're ready, hopefully, to move into what I call the impact zone, where we're living life guided by empowered choices and intentional actions, which essentially for me translates into doing what we genuinely want to do and what we feel called to do, and standing in our own power and not being swayed or portrayed by other people's expectations. That doesn't mean we don't care what other people think. It just means we are just in this state of wanting to have a positive impact, because we all know if you change your state, your vibration, the trickle down is crazy. And my mission for my business is to help 1,000 people because I help the people who help the people. So I work with coaches and speakers and business owners. Well, if I can help 1,000 of them to each help 1,000 of their people, look at my impact then. How cool is that? Yeah. So I guess the key here is, how do we get from one of these other zones? And I really ask people, and if you're listening today, you don't need to like text us and let us know what zone you're in, although I am kind of curious. I would love to know that you know what zone you're in. That's the important thing. It doesn't matter that we know, but do you know, are you in the disconnected? Are you in the should? Are you in the frustration? Or are you, like very few people, however some, in the impact zone? So as long as you identify where you are, you know where you want to go. And the key to getting there, I say, is to often up your brave and to navigate across this big divide, or this crevasse, if we want to use some outdoorsy terms, that will help us to get to the impact zone, living life guided by empowered choices and intentional actions.
Yes, that's so beautiful. And I think, like, it's really important, and not as many people in the world have done this, actually looked into where they are, what have they done, like taking time for reflection to understand, where am I standing? and am I standing where I want to or not? And I think that like one of the things that you mentioned that I think it's so important in terms of being able to up your brave and to do this is to have courage. Like this is something that most people are not doing that every single day, like are not taking courageous actions and are not doing that from a place of whatever that is, like whether that is because they don't know, because they feel a little bit of guilt or whatever reason that is. And I think that it's really important when people take the time to reflect, and because then you know, okay, this is where I am, where do I want to go? And that gives you the steps as well of where do you want to go, what to do. And I think that it's really interesting as well, something that you mentioned from this third group, that is that frustration zone. That is when a lot of times I talk to people, I asked, why waiting until you hit rock bottom, which is where a lot of people start to make some changes. Whereas you might already be in the knowing that this is not where you want to be. So being able to take a lot of that awareness to create the change from where you are. But when people are in that frustration zone, it's much more easy. And I would love to know, Nat, you just mentioned that shame and guilt and that those type of emotions or qualities. Can you expand a little bit on why, like, some of these different emotions, even anger, how they can actually be positive in a sense?
Yeah. So I'll start with the shame and the guilt. So those ones I don't think are positive. Sometimes, my daughter will make a comment like, oh, I feel really bad because whatever. I'm like, there's no point in feeling bad. You do something about it or you don't, and that's just the way I view the world. I know it's not always that easy, but I often say I don't do perfection. So that's why it makes it easier for me to put myself out there, because I'm not a perfectionist. I'm not trying to be perfect. So if someone says, what's the antidote, to courage, I would be like caring less what other people think. In other words, like ditching perfection as a goal, number one. But, guilt and shame, I'm allergic to guilt, and I always say to my kids, like, I don't believe in embarrassment. So they don't agree. But so over here in the should zone, we often really are trying to please. It's people pleasing, right? We're trying to please or impress or not look stupid in other people's eyes. And what happens is we're always putting ourselves last. And this is very much a thing that mothers will do, but everyone does it. We'll often, I would apply for that job, but I'll look like a dick if I don't get it. So you know what? I think I'll just stay where I am. It's like the salary is okay. It's like, really? Like, are you really? That's okay for you? So, we also know we're in the should zone if we're using, there's some key indicators, which are some languaging words. If you hear someone say should, need, or just, I just need to do this. I really need to do that. It's like, do you? Need or want. So looking at your languaging is an amazing tool, and self-correcting yourself in the micro moments when you start saying should, need, or just, those are indicators of victim languaging of, well, I don't really want to, but I said I would, I think I should, other people are expecting me to. So it's really around changing the languaging and changing the framing of what's of being guided by what we genuinely want. Let's go over to the frustration zone. When I said, I don't think anger and jealousy are bad emotions. Anger is actually great, because anger is usually when you're not being listened to or you're not being heard. And quite often that happens when either the person's not listening because they're like, no, you're wrong, or you're actually not saying what you want. Like, you're not being clear, or you're not being honest. You're not being transparent in verbalizing. And it's fine to write things down. I've got a child who gets really nervous to really say some things, so they prefer to actually leave a note on our bed, whatever works. Like my husband and I will often text each other better than we do speaking in person, because it just gets a little bit fiery sometimes. So I think sometimes people get angry when they're not being listened to, not being heard. Sometimes it's because they're not speaking their truth. They're not saying what they want, which is interesting. So going, actually, I'm really angry with this person, but do they know that I am? No, probably not, because they actually haven't told them, in an effective way, not in a sassy, annoyed way. So frustration. So that's anger. And obviously we don't want to be angry all the time, but acknowledging how we feel and identifying, well, why is it that I'm getting so triggered? When we get triggered by someone, I say, Don't think, oh, that's bad. I shouldn't. Oh, well, you're back in the should zone. No, lean into the learning and go, oh, that's so curious. I wonder why what that person said has really fired me up. Like, wow, that's quite fascinating. So I'm such a curious learner that I always like to lean into the learning rather than making that person wrong, even though I might not see eye to eye with them. Now, jealousy is interesting as well. So a lot of people say to me, well, Nat, that's cool, but I don't even know what I want. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, everything's so up in the air and so uncertain, because my phrase is up your brave, say what you want, make it happen. What if I don't? That's great, Nat. What if I don't know what I want? And I say, think of someone or something that you're jealous of. Oh, well, my friend, Lisa, like, her husband is so helpful. He's always doing the laundry and whatever. Okay. So you want your husband to be more helpful. Yeah. Okay, cool. What else do you want? Well, who else are you jealous of? Oh, when I look through Instagram, is this person, like, they always going to, Queenstown, they went skiing, and like, we never get to go on. So we never get to go, should zone, right? Okay. So you're saying you want to go to Queenstown? We don't necessarily want to go to Queenstown, but I want to go on some luxe holiday, which is not camping. Awesome. Now we're getting closer to what you want. So sometimes people don't know what they want, and we have to do the flip side and go like, well, who are you jealous of? Because that is obviously telling you like what you desire. And so I say jealousy is like a beam of light shining down on what you truly desire. Isn't that cool for a reframe?
Yes, that's so incredible. And I think that, like, for me, one of the biggest things that you just mentioned, being open and curious, because in terms of what's behind those emotions, what's behind that. And I think that reframing as well is so important, because most of the ways that we've been taught don't work really. Like, they are really unhelpful. And the way that I work with this, especially a lot of times with the emotional side of things, is going back to the feelings instead of to the emotion, and understanding, is this something that I can control or not, and then letting that go. Because I had many people, and I had this once with in a workshop that I was running, that this girl was sharing that she felt a lot of guilt of her position of privilege, right? Like, and we were talking around the well-being of the planet, and she was telling me that she traveled around Latin America and that she saw the amount of poverty, and she felt really guilty about it. And I was like, cool that now you know what's going on actually, and not just being whatever you are without actually seeing what's going on. But at the same time, how is that guilt helping you? That guilt is paralyzing you to not do anything. So take the reason why you're in that space, that is, now I know there's bigger thing than I thought. What are the actions that you're going to take, and how can you use that energy instead of allowing it to freeze you? And I think that this is so important in terms of being able to switch how we actually relate to our experience daily. And of course, this takes a lot of reflection time, awareness, and takes like literal space to do things. And I believe a lot of times most people don't take that time and that space to be and just be like, okay, where am I? What am I doing? And where do I want to keep on going?
Well, that's a perfect example. Exactly what you did with her. You literally helped her to go from the should zone to the impact zone, just by asking a few questions, going, well, what's on the flip side of the guilt? Like, what can you do about it? The control, what can I and can't I control? And also, I'd say on the flip side of guilt is probably gratitude. So you see all these people, you go, wow, I am extra grateful now for my, clean water, or my, the space for me during lockdown, this ample space that we have in our yard for the children to play. And they're not young, like, they're teenagers, but just, we have a lot of space. So we don't feel cramped and contained. You can always feel guilty. You can always find someone else who's got it worse than you, but really how productive is that? It's like, let's be grateful. And then let's do something about it. If you feel bad for people, you can help them. Don't just feel bad.
Definitely. And gratitude is such a wonderful practice, not only a practice, but also a state of being. I think like as a vibration, being grateful. And this is why there's so many amazing practices either at the beginning of the day or ending of the day. It's just making a list if that is what someone does, or just in their heads what one is grateful for. Because yes, like I totally know I'm in a really privileged situation, even though there's people with way more than me. But if I see like someone that, as you're saying, like doesn't have drinking water today or doesn't have food or whatever today, I'm super privileged and I'm grateful for that, because this is my circumstance, whether it came or whether I made it happen. Where am I now? Being grateful is so important. And I wonder, Nat, if you can share a little bit on, we've been talking a little bit more from a personal perspective. For those that are listening that might be entrepreneurs or might actually be like having their own businesses or working in any capacity like that, what does up your brave mean for them?
Well, number one, putting yourself out there. If you're in business, you have to usually let people know that you're in business and let them know what you're selling or how you can help them. One of the things I remind people all the time is every business is selling either love, money, or health. And when I remind business owners of that, they go, okay, great. Like they don't, because so many people, and especially in New Zealand, if I'm going to just, generally where most of my clients are, they're like, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be salesy. And I'm like, okay, got that. However, you are amazing and you have such an incredible product or service or whatever. So how can we share that with the world on a bigger level? And for some people, and most of my people do, they're speakers, they want to use their voice. So they want to do webinars or they want to get on TV or be interviewed or whatever. But not everyone's in that boat. So let's just keep it more general. It's just if I say, remember, you sell love, money, or health, or a combination, I actually sell all three. So yay, it's so fun. And then people go, oh, okay, that doesn't feel as scary. Well, now I can up my brave and put myself out there because I don't feel like I'm really pushing myself on people. I'm just helping them with either more love, more money, or more health. And that feels really good. So sometimes doing a reframe on what you're actually selling, or a realization, I suppose, is really good. But I don't know. I mean, up your brave means different things for different people. Sometimes when I say to some people, I'm like, okay, what is your money goal? How much money do you want to earn per month? And they're like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about a money goal. I'm like, okay, well, let's think of one. Like, is it $2,000? Is it $20,000? Like, and so for some people, even identifying the monetary amount they want they feel guilty, they feel greedy, like all the money stories, right? Whereas for someone else, they might think, well, me launching my website is really upping my brave, or having a photo. I had a client, oh my gosh, they were like not wanting the photo shoot. They were so resistant. And I'm like a branding person. I'm like, we got to get the photos to match the vibe of what you're about and what your message. And so the photos that you have from 3 years ago, that's not who you are anymore. And so it's fascinating. Some people just doing a photo shoot is upping their brave. And I honor them for that. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Not everyone wants to speak to thousands of people on stage, but some people do. And that's upping their brave to actually even say that, and then to write the keynote, and then to apply to speak at the conference or whatever the case may be.
Definitely. And can you share that a little bit more on, and this is something that you do, you connect people, you enable that to actually be win-win situations.
Yeah.
My point of view is that we are not in competition with others, that we can co-create, we can collaborate, we can work together and help each other in whichever way. And I know this is a lot of what you do. So can you expand on the importance of being able to work with others and to connect others, and how can people change their mindset in terms of that?
Yeah, well, especially back to the entrepreneurial space. Well, people generally love to connect, especially now when we feel so disconnected. Entrepreneurials, though, we speak the same language, meaning if I have a friend who also is a mother, but she's not an entrepreneur, there's just some things that I that she just won't get, right? So when you get amongst other entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, meaning people that like you and I, we work usually for ourselves, by ourselves. Some people have staff, most people don't. Some people might have a VA or a contractor. But so you get amongst those people and they get it. Like they know what it's like to wear all the hats and be the marketing person and be the, this person and that person in the business. And so that's really important, is the connection for other people that get you. I did a online networking event last week, and I did say exactly that to them. I said, hey, I want to remind everyone that I'm a big believer in co-opetition rather than competition. And some of them were in the chat box, were like, "Ooh, I love that word, co-opetition," meaning, if there's someone here and we're all going around, we're introducing ourselves, and there's someone here that's a personal trainer. Some people might be like, "Ooh, she's a personal trainer. I'm a personal trainer. Is it going to be awkward?" No, you both are selling health. You both are actually selling love as well, by the way. So lean into that. In fact, embrace that and be like, wow, that's so cool. We both want to help people be healthy and fit and confident and love their body. And how cool is that? And most of my people already feel like that, but sometimes I feel like I just want to remind them, when you meet someone who is in your same niche, it's awesome. It's not something to be trying to avoid. Oh, we're both in the parenting area. Like, that's awkward. No, that's incredible. You're both trying to help parents, and they need as much help as they can get these days. So I think that's such a great philosophy. It's so important. Once people realize that, again, they go, oh, okay.
Definitely. And there's another thing that going with this that I think that it's really important, and for me it's really relevant, because I do believe that when we can tap into our gifts, when we can tap into what we're bringing into this world, and we use that as our work, we are able to not only be aligned with who we are, but we're doing something that is really positive, and we're doing good for ourselves and for the people around in our community or in the world, depending on the type of exact work that we do. Can you expand a little bit on the importance of being able to do good in terms of how we live our lives?
Yeah, well, I know this is so aligned with what you're about, and me as well. Remember thinking back to my history of being in all the clubs, Amnesty International and everything. I recently wrote a chapter in a book, and here it is, Trailblazers. I recently wrote a chapter. We had to do a topic we hadn't spoken on before, a topic that we haven't really published before, and so I couldn't do my Up Your Brave, and I got help from the awesome Chris Hanlon, who, by the way, is a TEDx coach, and he's amazing. And I actually hired him to help me find another topic that was true to me, true to who I am, unique topic, passes the eyebrow test. So it's intriguing. We haven't really heard it before. And he helped me come up with how to win by doing good, how to win by doing good. So in my chapter, I talk about, often when we think about winning, that feels like kind of selfish or self-orientated or ego or something like that. And then doing good always comes across as being like selfless and, for the good of someone else. But actually what I'm saying in the chapter is, are they really that different? Can you actually win by doing good? And I really encourage people to keep your eyes open and look for examples around you where people are doing good and they're winning. And one example I gave is just up at my local shops where we got a bunch of takeaways. And this is about a year or so ago. They ended up putting this piano outside the Indian restaurant. And so that anyone walking by can just like da-da-da, or while they're waiting for their takeaways, depending on the lockdown status or whatever, sometimes they take the piano away. But it's just there. And I just started to notice around me all these little, examples of how people are doing a good thing for the local community, but they're also winning, and my son, he's a really talented musician with absolutely no training, and he's 13 and he can just get on there and play Ed Sheeran. And it's just, everyone's like, oh, well, waiting for their takeaways, impressed. And there's so many examples all around us, but also in business, thinking of how can you also do good in your business, but also it doesn't have to be altruistic and, not help you grow as a brand or as a person. So it's really around that concept. I do think, rightly or wrongly, everybody wants to do good. Maybe not as many people, or maybe not as much as I think they do, but I would like to think that everyone wants to have a quote unquote positive impact But a few years ago, I really named it and claimed it. And I really said, you know what? I only work with entrepreneurs and businesses who want to change the world for good. Because I'm like, if they're selling something that's not good for the planet or the people, personally, I'm not interested in shining the light on them. Personally, I'm not interested in getting them airtime on, TV or a podcast, because that goes against what I'm about. And so I think I realize not every single business, is designed to change the world for good, but for those ones that are, and there's so many, and you've covered many in your podcasts, I think it's great if they can also win by doing good.
Yes, and I think that it's important, like as you're saying, all of this time, like changing our mindset, changing the way that we are thinking of some of these topics, because I do believe that when we are actually doing good, that for others or for the planet, that we can actually have a good impact on our own well-being, on our own finances, on everything, because it's a reflection as well what we are doing. And as something that you just said, I always believe that everybody believes that what they are doing is good and that they are right. Every single person in the world does that. Now, whatever their background is, that's going to cloud, of course, what they believe good is or not. But at the end of the day, I think that everybody thinks that what they are doing is the right thing. And I hope that with more and more awareness of everything that is going on from a personal and like societal and planetary perspective, the more people wake up to the understanding that it's like, okay, this that I might be doing, like selling a product that is really bad for the environment, I might just discontinue that, or I might just stop that because it's not aligned to the understanding of where things are. And I think that is so important to be able to recognize that. From that place that I just mentioned, the word well-being, I think that like, and you haven't spoken so far about this. I know that this is part of you and what you're doing. What's well-being? How do you help people with their well-being? And what are the different places and ways that someone can touch on their well-being?
Yeah, well, my background back in the multi-sport days, sore muscles and more of the fitness and the body stuff. But as I've gotten older, it's become more of the emotional side as well. So I'm into essential oils. I've got some behind me. That is part of my business. And often because I feel like so many people put on a happy mask, they'll be like, everything's great, everything's fine. But they won't actually acknowledge I'm going through a hard time, or I'm actually really angry, because those are considered bad emotions, right? So I feel like if we can help people to, number one, identify or acknowledge how they feel. Number two, use either tools like this or mindset or Headspace app or journaling or whatever it is to process the emotions, right? To move the emotions through your body so they don't get stuck in your body, because quite often that's what we do, especially when we're in the frustration zone. You're in the frustration zone when it starts coming up in your personal relationships and it starts affecting your physical body. Like, you'll have skin flare-ups. Well, guess what? I had someone the other day, they're like, oh, my skin's just so itchy. It's like, well, what are you irritated about, right? I love the emotional connection between the way physical, well-being shows up and the emotional connection. Some people will be like, oh, whatever. I'm like, no, I lean into that. I'm so curious about it. So for me, I think there is a massive connection between, if you're going to get out there and rock an interview or change the world with your business, well, guess what? You need to be healthy. You need to be energetic. You need to be resilient, not just in mind, also in body, to have the energy to go out there and find the clients and serve the clients and, and take some time for yourself and come back to who you are and make sure that you're, achieving your goals while not chasing someone else's dreams. Like there's a lot in there, right? So that's why I think, keeping yourself number one, making sure that you are the best version of yourself, healthy and wealthy version of yourself is really important. I think so often we do put other people first. I do care a lot about other people, but I think so often we put other people ahead of us, and also mainly what other people think of us ahead of our own selves, that we're all running in circles around each other, trying to please everyone. I think if people actually, this might sound counterintuitive, if everyone just really looked after themselves, the world would be a better place. Wow, that sounds wrong, right? But listen to it. If everyone health and, well-being. They ate food that was nurturing for them, and they did exercise that was appropriate for their body type. I love the topic of health types and body types. They had positive mindset and really, owned their friendships and really surrounded themselves by supportive people and really got out of habits that weren't serving them. Like, imagine that. Imagine what a happy, healthy community we would be, instead of everyone else running around trying to impress everyone else or not being who they are because they don't want people to get the wrong idea. That's where health problems come from, is everyone not being true to who they are, I think.
Yes, definitely. And I also I always talk about putting yourself first. And it's not about being selfish or anything. It's about understanding what you just said. I need to take care of myself. Nobody's going to take care of myself like I can do for myself. And if I am well, then yes, I can help others. Just like in an airplane, like put your mask first on before you help someone else. And what you said is completely true. When everyone is in that place, then whatever we are doing as society is much better, because everybody's actually taking care of number one. And number one doesn't mean that others are not number one as well. They can be number 1.2, like something like that. But it's about understanding that most people have been neglecting their own truth. Most people are not living aligned to what they who they are, because, as you just said, they are thinking that others are thinking about them and all of the shoes and and all of that. And so important to recognize, am I living in alignment? Am I living how I want to? And am I speaking my truth? And I think that this it's so important. And I know most people are not doing that. Most people don't want to say things in that they know that they need to say, and then they get a lot of the physical repercussions because of that. And it's so important. Like, I know so many people, especially living here in New Zealand for the last 7 years, throats so closed because people don't speak their truth.
You know what's interesting? Spearmint is the oil of confident speech. And so sometimes if I'm helping someone, and yes, I am a speaker coach in a way, or a media coach in a way. And I'm like, you know what? You know your stuff. You know what you need to say. It's just that they're just blocking it, like you said. And so sometimes even spearmint, in some water or rubbing it topically on their throat before they go on to stage or whatever can actually help them. Or before they go into their coaching session where they're coaching their clients or whatever the case may be, can help them to really, really speak their truth. So it is so fascinating. So there's such a connect between the well-being side of things and the business side of things.
Definitely. And this is where I believe that the more that we understand life from a holistic place, and this is for me well-being is complete. It's not about one aspect. We tend to compartmentalize everything and separate things, whereas everything is actually like working in relationship to other things, whether that is my own well-being is tied to my business well-being, my own well-being is tied to my relationships with others. Like, everything is together with that, but we have a tendency to separate things and not seeing that connection.
Actually, on that note, I just want to point out with the zones, because sometimes people say to me, but Nat, can I be in 2 zones at the same time? So you just reminded me of that. And so, yes, you can, right? You can say, oh, well, in my relationship, we're actually in the impact zone at the moment. It's awesome. But in my business, I'm definitely in the disconnected zone because whatever. So you can be straddling various zones, in case people are wondering. So usually when I say to someone, like, which zone is the biggest struggle for you at the moment, they're like, I'm actually really good in these aspects of my life, but I'm in the should zone, when it comes to my job. Okay, that's where we're going to focus on, and we're going to empower you to move across to the impact zone.
Beautiful. Yes. And I think that this is the interesting thing a lot of times of like what I just said in terms of everything is connected as well. Everything, we can see it as separate, and we can see just that aspect of things so that we understand what we're focusing on and what to pay attention to. So I think that is also really important. And Nat, we are almost towards the end of this episode. So I want to ask you something that I don't know if you have already mentioned, perhaps you have, but what's the one thing that you wish that everyone in the world knew? This is always a big one.
Well, okay, this is one of my favorite phrases, and I didn't mention it specifically, but it is care what you think more. Okay, care what you think more. And here's what it's about. Of course, I care what other people think and what other people think of me. Of course, I do. But you know what? And we say it from a place of empowerment, not a place of like ego sassiness. But you know what? I actually care what I think more. So I've been in some debates lately about all sorts of things and been asked, well, who do you trust? Do you trust this person? And do you trust that person? And this article that you read and that movie that video that you watched? I said, you know what? I trust myself. I trust me is my number one person. And so it is that go with your gut, come back to your intuition, care, it's that it really is. Of course, we care about other people and what they think of us, but care what you think more is 4 powerful words that when said with empowerment from a state of presence and grounding and sovereignty is so powerful. And that's what can help people in terms of upping your brave and confidence and resilience and all of those things. And to keep you on path. Sometimes if you're like, I just don't know, there's so many different opinions, you know what? Just trust yourself and care what you think more. And that would be the thing that I wish everybody knew.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful and so important. I'm like so grateful that from a young age I learned that and to be able to listen to myself much more than what other people are saying, and even more than what I believe that people might be saying. So that is so important. And lastly, Nat, how can people find you and find out what you're doing and work with you?
Yeah, well, my business, been in business 10 years. It's called Go To Girl Limited. So a lot of people know me as the Go To Girl, but actually it's on Instagram at Go To Girl NZ. So I'm quite active. I'm doing a Instagram live series at the moment, which is pretty fun. And it's the Evolve series. And my website, the easiest one to remember, I've got a few, is upyourbrave.com.
Beautiful. And what are the things that are coming now on 2022?
Yeah, I talk a lot about staying, and we need to evolve our businesses as we go and we adapt to what's coming up for us in the world, but also what's coming up for us on a personal level. And so I am very excited to be closing a few doors in my business, opening a few doors in my business. I'm looking at doing Empowered Connections, which is online and in person in Auckland. So online internationally, Empowered Connections, which is basically done with you, networking, going back to my true love, which is superpower, connecting people. And then I'm also doing Evolve to Amplify, which is a high level mastermind group over a 12-week period, which is very exciting, helping already successful business owners or experts in their own field to truly evolve and align their business so they can be the leader that they were born to be. It's very exciting.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. And really looking forward to continue to working and collaborating and seeing how things keep on evolving in 2022. Because I love to be part of the groups with you and to be part of being able to amplify what we're doing and connecting with others. So thank you so much, Nat, for taking the time to be here, for sharing with us, for sharing a little bit of your story and to give people as well some things to think about. So for everyone listening, just let us know in the comments, wherever you find this episode, what are the things that resonated with you? And if you are actually taking the time to reflect, which zone are you, and anything else that Nat talked about that potentially is like an aha moment. So let us know in the comments. Once again, Nat, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Great. Thanks, Brian. See you guys.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.